In the last section, we finished modeling our person dropping off the form and the form itself by creating a collection of different action creators and actions. We're going to skip over this dispatch step right here. Remember, the dispatch is like our form receiver, who is going to receive a form, or an action as we refer to it, make a copy of that form, and then send it out to all the different departments. This dispatch thing right here is actually a part of the Redux library itself, so we don't have to write that from scratch. So we're going to skip over dispatch and move over to implementing some reducers. The idea behind these reducers things are that we're going to write out a couple of different functions, and each function is going to model a different department inside of our company. So we're going to have a reducer that is in charge of modeling the behavior of our claims history department, a second reducer for our accounting department, and a third reducer for our policies department as well. Each one of these reducers is going to be called with an action, or a form, that had been originally created by an action creator. The reducer is then going to inspect that form, or that action, and decide whether or not it needs to modify some data based upon that action. Now, one quick thing I want to remind you about. Remember, we had said that in order to make sure that this management out here was able to easily read all the data produced by our departments, we were going to move all of our data to this outside repository of sorts. And only when we had a form to pass in a department would we take that department's little slice of data inside that repository and pass it into that department. So that's going to start to become relevant when we put this reducer thing together. All right, so let's get to it. I'm going to flip back over, and then underneath our three action creators, I'm going to put down a new section for our reducers. And remember, these are like our departments. So we're going to first work on our claims history reducer. Every reducer that we put together is always going to be a function. It always gets two arguments that are always passed in the exact same order. The first argument is going to be whatever existing little piece of data from our central repository that belongs to this particular department. So I'm going to receive that as an argument that I will call old list of claims. I'm calling it old list of claims because this reducer is going to get this old set of claims right here, and the expectation is that the reducer is going to somehow update that list of claims depending upon the contents of an action that is passed in as the second argument. And remember, that action right there is like our form. So this is the same scenario that you just saw a little bit ago inside this diagram. The claims history, which is a function, is going to be passed the old list of claims and the form. So now the reducer needs to look at that form and decide whether or not it cares about the type of this form. If it is of type create claim, then we want to make sure that the code inside of this function is going to attempt to pull off that payload property and add it to our list of claims and then return that. If it's not of a type that we care about, then we don't care about this form at all, and we're just going to return our existing list of claims completely unchanged. All right. Oh, wrong tab. There we go. So now inside of here, we're going to look at the actions type. So I'm going to say action.type. If that is equal to create claim, then that means we care about this action or form. But if we don't get into that if statement, then we don't care about the form, or let's call it what it really is, an action, like so. So now if we are inside the if statement, we're going to update our list of claims with the payload of this action right here. Otherwise, we will just return. So inside of the if statement, I'm going to say return, and then this next little bit of code right here is going to look a little bit strange, but just bear with me for a second. I'm going to say ... old list of claims, and then a comma, and then action.payload, like so. All right, so what's going on here? This is just a little bit of ES 2015 syntax. What this does is it takes a array, old list of claims, that's going to be a list right there, an array. The ... means that we're going to take all of the records inside there and add them to a brand new array. And then after that, we're going to add in this new record right here of action.payload. To help you understand that syntax, we could put together a quick example over in our console over here. I could say something like const numbers equals 1, 2, 3, And then I can create a new array by putting in a square bracket, ... numbers, and some new number to insert. That's going to create a brand new array with the values from numbers. And so when I run that, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. The ... in particular essentially means that we're not going to nest an array inside this one. We're just going to take all the values out of numbers and add it to the new array that we are creating. So this is abbreviated syntax to essentially join the contents of two arrays together. Now we could have written this line of code right here by putting together old list of claims .push action.payload. We could have done that, but there's a very distinct difference between this line right here that we just wrote, or that I just wrote right there, and the one after it, the return with the return statement. The difference is that in this case right here, we are creating a brand new array and adding records to it. With the push function, we are modifying an existing array. This is something I'm going to talk to you about in great detail nonstop as we start working on reducers. Anytime that we want to change a record or change something inside of a reducer, we always 100% of the time want to return a new array or a new object as opposed to modifying an existing one. So we always avoid, as much as possible, modifying existing data structures inside of a reducer. And I'll tell you why in just a little bit as we start to get towards the end of this example. So I'm going to remove the push statement. In general, you're just about never going to see push inside of a reducer. All right, so this right here handles the case in which we care about this action. We take our old list of claims and we add on the payload off the form or the action that we just got. And now down here, we're going to handle the case in which we don't care about the action. So I'll say return old list of claims, like so. All right, so that looks good. Now there's one little additional thing that we have to add to this reducer. The reducer is a function, so remember it doesn't really have any idea of what its data is until it gets called for the first time. We need to make sure that for this old list of claims, we need to make sure that we handle the case in which our reducer is being called for the very first time, in which we might not have some original list of claims. So what I mean by that is that the very first time that our reducer gets called, there will be no data, no previous list of claims to be passed in here. Instead, the first time this reducer gets called, we'll essentially receive the value undefined as that first argument. So in case this reducer is being called for the very first time, we need to default the value of that first argument. To do so, I'm going to add on a equals array, like so. So now if someone ever calls claims history with a value of undefined for old list of claims, then that undefined value will be replaced with an empty array. Okay, so that's a completed reducer right there. Now let's keep writing our other two. We're going to get through the other two reducers much more quickly. So I'm now going to give myself a little bit of space, and then I'll put down how about accounting? We'll take care of the accounting department next. Oh, and you know what? I just realized I got a little typo right there. It should be old list of claims with a lowercase l. That's better. Okay, so now for the accounting reducer, we're again going to make a function that's going to be called with our current bag of money, because remember, that's the purpose of the accounting department. So we get our bag of money right here. That's going to basically be a simple number as opposed to the array that we had for our claims history. And then the accounting department is going to have a little bit more complex logic inside of it. So the first argument will be our bag of money. The second argument will be our action. Now the first thing we want to do is see if the action that's coming in has something to do with a claim. If it does, then we want to somehow pull off the money from, or the payload of that, and make sure that we subtract some amount of money from our bag of money. So inside of here, I'm going to say if action.type equals create claim. If that's the case, then I'm going to return bag of money minus, and remember this action right here, the actual amount of money that we want to deduct, the amount of money that our customer wants to collect, can be accessed from this object right here. So it will be action.payload.amount of money to collect. And I just realized I got a little typo there as well. It should be amount of money to collect, not collection. That's better. Okay, so now I'll go back down. So it's going to be action.payload amount of money to collect. Cool. All right, now let's take care of the other case, the case in which this is not trying to create a claim. So the next thing we're going to do is check to see if the action is trying to create a policy. If they are trying to create a policy, then we're going to take whatever money was included in that action's payload and add it into our original bag of money and return it. So if else if action.type is equal to create policy, then we're going to return a bag of money plus action.payload.amount. And then finally, the only other case is that someone is not trying to create a new claim or create a new policy. And so in that case, we don't care about this form at all. So we're just going to return the current value of our bag of money. And so I'm going to return bag of money. Now, just as before, the first time this reducer gets called, we don't have any value for bag of money. It's going to be a value undefined. And so we're going to default the value of this thing to some reasonable default value. We'll start off saying that our company initially has $100, like so. And so if someone tries to create a claim and take money from our company, we'll subtract 100 minus how much money they're trying to collect. If they're trying to create a policy and pay us money, we'll take our bag of money and add in that amount and return it. Otherwise, we'll just return our bag of money. All right, let's take another pause right here. When we come back to the next section, we're going to work on our last reducer, our policies department. So quick pause, and I'll see you in just a minute.